Hi, I'm Lauren Bradford, one of the members of the Stateline Sports Reporters podcast. And for this college football season, I know we have a lot of college football fans in the area. I thought it would be fun to do a little college football catch up every week, kind of preview some of our local matchups as well as some of just the big matchups in college football. So we're gonna get started right down the road in Johnson City. We've got ETSU on the road at App State week 1. Not really an ideal game for Trey Lamb in his debut. That's for sure. I think that the Bucks will be much improved this year, but App State is always a tough one. App State has given UNC a run for their money. They've given Power 5 programs some real tough games as of recent. So I just don't it's not an ideal game for ETSU to start off with. That's for sure. They've got Joey Aguilar at quarterback. Around him, they have a bunch of experience in the rushing game as well as in the receiving game. Trey Lamb actually started off his year last year at Gardner-Webb with a loss to App State. A lot of those same players are going to be on this ETSU team with the amount that transferred in. ETSU players, as far as who to keep an eye on for week 1, you got obviously QB1, Jalen King. I think that became pretty apparent early on. We also have tight end Cam Lewis, returning running back from ETSU, Bryson Irby, wide receiver AJ Johnson, and then you have a number of people on defense that could be playmakers, including some returning faces as well as some newcomers. So there's a lot to be excited for. I think ETSU is really going to have to key in on that rush defense. That's something that they pride themselves on. I think that has got to be key in this matchup. When we look historically at the two teams going at it, they played 5 games and ETSU's never won. So not great, not a great start. The last time that they played was back in 2019. ETSU lost 42-7. We're going to hope that it's not that ugly this time around. That's for sure. ESPN does not think ETSU is gonna make a much of a name for themselves as far as where the spread's at right now. But I think ETSU could come out and surprise. I'm hoping, regardless of, points, the end result, that we at least see some promising things from ETSU, things that we haven't seen in the past 2 seasons. On to game 2. I got my handy dandy game notes here to make sure I know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying is trustworthy. We've got Virginia Tech on the road at Vanderbilt. Hopefully a lot of Hokies fans are making that trip, can get nice and rowdy in Nashville. My parents will be there. Super pumped. This is just the 10th ever meeting between the two teams, with the last meeting all the way back in 1989. Taylor Swift fans will be happy, like Kristen. Virginia Tech did indeed win that game 18-0. But what's that matter? I mean, it's been quite a few years. The Hokies were on the up at the end of last season, while Vanderbilt 2-10. I mean, you have to admit the ACC is probably a little bit easier to handle than an SEC schedule. But there's a lot of change in Vanderbilt. You got a new quarterback in Diego Pavia, a New Mexico State transfer. So you'll never know what they're gonna be able to put out on the field with him. They also added a total of 51 new players. They do have some experience on that defense with linebackers and safety, bring some junior, senior presence. So that could prove to be a problem. But as far as returners, I mean, Virginia Tech is at the top college football. They have 20 starters returning. Kyron Drones at quarterback, Bashal Tootin at running back, Daquan Felton, Jalen Lane, and a healthy Ollie Jennings at wide receiver. I think all of that is going to be super key to their success. I think there are a lot of fans that are super excited to see Ollie Jennings back at full strength. You got the O-line returning, the D-line, which has just been absolutely, you don't want to mess with that defensive line. Add in Duke transfer and ESP Bowls, that's going to be a problem in every game. But the experience is definitely on the Hokie side. You've got linebackers that are going to prove a big piece. And as far as local connections, you have right down the road in Bristol, Tennessee high product Jaden Keller beat out Kelly Lawson this season. He'll be the starter week 1. So that'll be super exciting to watch. As far as what the game's projected to be, ESPN has the Hokies picked 13 and a half point favorites. We'll see. You never really know what Vanderbilt's going to do. So we'll see. We'll have more on that coming up later here in just a minute. Moving on down the road to Knoxville, we've got Chattanooga, who has to see ETSU over there in the SoCon. They're taking on Tennessee. It'll be my first game in Neyland. I'm quite excited. I've not actually been to an SEC football game yet, so I think that'll be quite interesting. Obviously, it's not the SEC matchup that you're jumping at the gates for, but you never know what these kind of games can bring. It is week 1. The last meeting between these two teams was all the way back in 2019. Tennessee blanked the Mocs 45-0, and Tennessee has never lost at home to Chattanooga. So we'll hope that continues this week. They used to play every year way back in the day, back in the 60s, but this is just the third meeting between the two since 69. So as far as not a whole lot of familiarity between those two teams, but there are definitely some playmakers on both sides of the ball here. As far as Tennessee, you've got James Pierce Jr. He's about on every watch list that you could have. He should be an early first round NFL draft pick this year. He's also the top returning edge rusher in the SEC. On offense, everyone knows it's Nico Yamaleava's home debut. So there's a lot of hype around him. Came in as a 5-star and then started his first game in that Citrus Bowl last year. He was actually the first Tennessee freshman starting quarterback to win a game since Peyton Manning, as if that doesn't put any pressure on. But, I'm sure that he can live up to the hype, at least getting this win over Chattanooga, you would hope. Two players that are going to be big for Tennessee that are coming off injuries last year, both have a ton of experience. You have Brew McCoy starting at wide receiver. He's going on his 7th season in college football. And then on the other side of the ball, you're really going to need a big year out of Keenan Peely coming from BYU. He was the class of 2016. Talk about a throwback. That he's been around for quite a few years. You are going to need him to have a big year. Chattanooga will come into the game ranked in the top 10 for FCS ranking. So you got a number 8 versus a number 15. Not quite the same in the grand scheme of things, but, it is a ranked-on-ranked matchup. We have to give them some credit there. So as far as Chattanooga, you have to look. They have one of the best defensive players in the SoCon in defensive tackle, Marlon Taylor. Pretty much every SoCon coach was polled in the SoCon Media Day about what player they would want. If they could steal a player from another team, almost everyone's answer was Taylor. So he's a playmaker. So that'll be interesting to see what impact he has on this game and what he's able to do against a team of Tennessee's caliber. But ESPN knows that this is not a game. The line is set at 38.5. So Tennessee should be able to handle business pretty easily here. So now that we have covered ETSU, Virginia Tech, Tennessee, how about some other big games going around in college football this year? I don't know if I should be excited or scared or both. Clemson opening up with Georgia. It's a neutral site in Atlanta, which I don't know how neutral that exactly is, but, fair enough. It's a neutral site. The last time these two played were at a neutral site. I was actually at that game. They played in Charlotte back in 2021, where Clemson lost 10-3. A little pain in my heart as a Clemson fan. I also did indeed get barked at the entire walk back from the stadium to where we were staying. So I have hold a little bit of a grudge from that. But this should be a good game. It should be an exciting game. I think a lot of people are excited to watch this game. You've got two returning quarterbacks, UGA, Carson Beck, facing off against Cade Klubnik, who was super hyped coming into Clemson, hasn't really lived up to that hype. You're hoping that as he gets adjusted to Garrett Riley's system that he can kind of fall in place. But both teams aren't really known for their offensive play at this point. They're both known for being big defensive teams. So we'll see what happens in that game. That one's going to be a toss-up there. even though Georgia's the number one team, I'm giving my Tigers a fighting chance for sure. Moving right along, you have an in-state rivalry to kick off this season. Number 19, Miami at Florida. There's a lot at stake for both these coaches. Both these coaches I have at least heard their names moving around on the coaching on the boards, seeing they need to have a nice season or else they're definitely on the hot seat. This is just a 2.5-point game, and overall the series, Miami has the upper hand by just a little tinge, 29-27 all time. So truly, this is a great rivalry. Miami has a new quarterback, Cam Ward, transfer from Washington State. He feels like he has a lot to prove in game one, and I think that if you're coming in ranked 19th, you do have to prove. I mean, you can't – it's an ACC-SEC matchup. You can't – if you're a ranked team, you can't lose that game, even if you're on the road in the swamp. It's going to be a tough game. University of Florida actually hasn't lost a home opener since '89. Miami will look to change that, and we'll see if they can get it done. All right, moving right along. Number 7, Notre Dame at number 20, Texas A&M. It is the host of College Game Day this week, so there are a lot of people that are going to be around this game. A&M is favored by a field goal as the home team. There are a lot of crossover in this game. You have a new head coach in Mike Elko at A&M. He came from Duke. You look at Notre Dame, they also have a big piece of Duke's season last year in quarterback Riley Leonard. He'll be over at Notre Dame with Freeman, seeing what they can get done. We'll see what happens there. Last meeting was all the way back in 2001 with A&M taking down Notre Dame 24-3. It'll be a test. Notre Dame under the third year under their new head coach, Texas A&M first year. So they should be at different points, but you never know. I mean, A&M is going to be a tough environment at home. It's going to be a good game. We'll see what happens. Last but certainly not least. Wow, let's get that one right. We have got number 23 USC at number 13 LSU. This one's going to be interesting. Both teams lost top-tier quarterbacks to the NFL this past year. You had Jaden Daniels, who won the Heisman. You had Caleb Williams, who won the Heisman. So there's some big shoes to fill there with Miller Moss for USC, Garrett Nussmeier for LSU. They've only met twice, and it's an even slate, 1-1. Who's going to break best of 3? The last meeting, LSU won in 84. So this is just a 4.5-point game. A lot on the line here. You want to start off your season on a high note. Who knows what's going to happen? I mean, USC, not known for their defense. The Pac-12 was never known for their defense. They're now in the Big Ten. They got to step that up a little bit. We'll see if they are rising to the Big Ten level. LSU, as an SEC team, did not have a strong defense last year. So I think the defense is probably going to be the difference maker in this one. Who can pull it together and start off their season on the right foot? And now we are going to close out this show with Lauren's locks. We're going to go through, take a look at the odds on each of these games. I'll give you my opinion, not the expert opinion, just an opinion. Take it as you will. I do enjoy throwing some money on games, but I'm not very successful, so take that as a note. We'll start off with ETSU App State. ESPN 34. App State is 34.5-point favorites over ETSU. It's tough because in theory, yes, App State should be able to cover that. I think that ETSU is going to take care of that spread, though. I think if you're going to pick with the spread, if you're picking money line, obviously I'm leaning App State. If you're picking with the spread, I'm going with the Bucks. Hot take. Moving on along, we've got Virginia Tech at Vanderbilt. That's a 13.5. I think that if Virginia Tech comes out and, I mean, with the hype that's around them, it would be disappointing if they didn't cover a 14, if they couldn't beat Vanderbilt by 2 touchdowns. So I'm sticking with Hokies money line spread, taking them all the way. Moving on along, Chattanooga, Tennessee, 38.5. Hot take of the day. I think Chattanooga actually covers that. Don't get mad at me, Tennessee fans. it's week one. There's still a lot of adjustments. This is Nico's second game as a starting quarterback. So I think there will be some learning curve there still. And I think that Chattanooga is coming in, and I think that they're going to cover a 38.5. That's a lot of points to put up. So I think they've got that covered. Georgia, UGA, Clemson, Georgia, 13.5 point favorites. I think obviously you're going Georgia money line. This might be my Clemson bias as a Clemson fan. I'm sticking with the Tigers covering. I think that it's going to be a closer game than a 2-touchdown game. Moving on to Miami and Florida, 2.5 point game. Who's going to win by a field goal? I'm giving it to the Hurricanes on the road. I think that they can get it done. It'll be close though. It'll be a tight one. I don't feel great about that pick. Moving on, Notre Dame, A&M. That's a Texas A&M 3-point favorites. I think Notre Dame wins flat out. So I'm taking Notre Dame in that one. USC, LSU. I've never really liked the USC hype. I don't think they've lived up to it pretty much ever. I think they've always choked. So not that LSU hasn't done their fair share of that too. But I am giving that one. I'm going to give that one to LSU as well. The 4.5 point spread. I think they cover that. I think that they're going to. I could see them actually blowing out USC in the end there. So that is going to be a wrap on our week one look ahead. What we're going to preview for week one. We'll see how I did in picking these games. We'll see how you did. We'll see who wins. We've got a lot of fun matchups week one. So make sure to tune in next week for week two. See us again.